Frankenstein's monster, a fictional character created by novelist Mary Shelley back in 1818. According to the Frankenstein novel, the monster was constructed from human body parts collected from cemeteries. Now, at the time Frankenstein was written, the whole idea of using parts from the dead to give new life to other people was, well, somewhat shocking. Things have changed a lot since then. Today, the concept of removing an organ from one person and putting it into another is fairly common. We call it a transplant. We transplant lungs, livers, kidneys, even hearts. But how do you do it? I mean, how do you remove a living organ from one person and place it in another and make it work? Well, there's a lot more to it than just slapping an organ into somebody and reconnecting it. No, transplants aren't that easy. You see, there are a number of obstacles you need to overcome. The biggest being the immune system of the person receiving the transplant. Allow me to explain. The immune system is a network of billions of cells that work in constant harmony with each other. The job of these cells is to protect us from anything foreign that might get into our body, like bacteria or a virus. Think of the immune system as a security guard, and your body as the building being secured. Much like your immune system, the security guard prevents intruders from entering the building, as well as dealing with anyone who happens to sneak in. The spearhead of the immune system is a special cell called the T cell, or for the sake of this analogy, Officer T. Officer T patrols the hallways and stairwells looking for intruders, just like the T cells of your immune system patrol your bloodstream looking for foreign substances. But how does the T cell know the difference between what belongs and what doesn't? In other words, how does Officer T know who's authorized to be in the building and who isn't? Well, each and every one of our body's cells has one of these, a security pass. Well, it's actually not a security pass. Each of our body's cells has a series of special molecules on its surface called antigens. The antigen tells the T cell that that particular cell is authorized to be in your body, that the cell is part of you. However, if the T cell comes across something that does not possess the proper antigens...
Hey, let's see your security pass.
The foreign substance is immediately identified as an intruder.
Cobra 1 to Cobra 2. Intruder alert, level 5. Send backup immediately.
Within seconds, the T cell signals the alarm and calls for reinforcements. The area is flooded with all kinds of immune cells, lymphocytes, macrophages. They eventually track down the invader, attacking it until it is finally destroyed. The immune system will attack anything foreign that gets into our bloodstream. This includes bacteria, viruses, and tissues, which presents a big problem when you're trying to transplant an organ. You see, no matter how much you need that new heart, kidney, or liver, your immune system still views it as a foreign organism invading your body. It's not you, so your immune system attacks it, breaking it down until it dies. A process known as rejection. To reduce the likelihood of rejection, we need to find some way to get around the immune system. But how do you do that? Well, the most effective way is to trick the immune system. And we do that by getting our organ from someone who has the same antigens as the person receiving the transplant. Someone with the same security pass. An organ with the same antigens as the recipient has a better chance of fooling the immune system into believing it belongs, so the immune system doesn't attack it.
Have a good day.
The kind of antigens a person has is determined by a series of tests that are performed on cells from a sample of the person's blood. All transplant patients are tested to determine what kind of antigens they have. Now, the results of those tests, along with some other information, such as their name, height, and weight, is stored in a computer database. But why store all that information in a computer? Well, when a person who has agreed to be an organ donor dies, his or her antigen type is determined, then sent immediately to the transplant computer. The computer then matches the donor with a patient who has a similar, if not the same, antigen type. Once a match has been made, the transplant team rolls into action. Their first job is to remove the organ from the deceased donor as soon as possible. It becomes unusable after about 30 minutes. Once the organ is removed, it's put into a plastic bag and put on ice to keep it fresh. The organ is then hurried to the hospital where the actual transplant operation will take place. Even on ice, an organ like a heart will only last 3 to 5 hours. Once the donor organ and recipient arrive at the hospital, the surgeons go to work. They remove the recipient's old diseased organ and replace it with the new donor organ. The procedure takes at least 4 hours. But it doesn't end there. You see, the success of a transplant is dependent on how well the donor's antigens match the recipient's antigens. Now, it's almost impossible to get an exact match unless the transplant patient has a twin brother or sister willing to part with an organ. In most cases, we can only get a very close match, which means the immune system may still reject the donated organ. So to further reduce the likelihood of rejection, transplant recipients take special anti-rejection drugs. The drugs work by blocking the chemical messages the T cell sends out to alert the other immune cells. With its communications network down, the immune system is unable to attack the donor organ. The anti-rejection drugs work pretty well. There's just one problem. With the immune system disabled, other foreign organisms like bacteria and viruses are able to enter the body and run rampant, making the transplant recipient more susceptible to disease and infection.
You! Stop!
Which is why doctors routinely check their transplant patients for signs of infection on a regular basis, adjusting the dosage of anti-rejection drugs to get that fine balance between rejection and infection. They went that way.